Welcome back to our channel where the shadows come alive and nightmares become reality. Sit back, grab a blanket, and prepare to be terrified. Samantha was a happy 10-year-old girl who loved playing with her dolls. She had a large collection of them, but her favorite one was a beautiful porcelain doll that her grandmother had given her as a birthday present. The doll had long curly hair and a pretty pink dress that Samantha loved to brush and comb. One night, Samantha went to bed early, feeling tired after a long day of playing outside with her friends. She snuggled under her covers and closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of her bed and the comfort of her pillows. As she drifted off to sleep, she hugged her beloved porcelain doll close to her chest, feeling safe and secure. But in the middle of the night, something strange happened. Samantha woke up suddenly, feeling a strange sensation on her hand. She opened her eyes and saw that her porcelain doll was poking her hand with its tiny fingers. Samantha rubbed her eyes, thinking that she was dreaming, but the doll continued to poke her. Samantha sat up in bed and looked at the doll in horror. Its eyes were wide open, staring at her with an eerie intensity. Samantha had never seen the doll look so alive before, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. Samantha woke up to find a doll staring at her. It spoke and asked to play. Samantha was scared and asked what the doll wanted. The doll's eyes glimmered, but Samantha was hesitant to play. She said it was late and she needed to sleep. The doll grew angry, but Samantha apologized and promised to play with it the next day. The doll smiled again, and Samantha felt relieved that it was over. With that, the doll's fingers stopped poking Samantha's hand, and it lay down next to her on the bed. Samantha lay back down, trying to calm her racing heart. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was not right with the doll, but she was too tired to think about it anymore. As Samantha drifted off to sleep, the doll's eyes opened again, and it began to whisper to itself in a language that Samantha did not understand. It was a language of ancient magic and dark rituals, and it sent chills down Samantha's spine. The next morning, Samantha woke up feeling groggy and uneasy. She couldn't remember much about the night before, but she had a vague feeling of unease that lingered in her mind. As she got dressed and went to the kitchen to have breakfast, she noticed that the porcelain doll was sitting on the kitchen table, staring at her with its lifeless eyes. Samantha shuddered, feeling a sense of dread wash over her. Throughout the day, strange things began to happen. Objects in her room would move by themselves, and strange noises would come from the walls. Samantha felt like she was being watched all the time, and the feeling of unease she had felt the night before only grew stronger. That evening, Samantha sat down to have dinner with her family. But as she began to eat, she noticed that the porcelain doll was sitting in a chair at the table, its eyes fixed on her. Samantha's heart raced, and she couldn't eat another bite. Her mother inquired about Samantha's unease. Samantha hesitated, unsure of what to say. She didn't want her parents to think she was crazy, but she knew she couldn't keep the strange events that were happening a secret. Samantha confessed that she believes her doll is alive and can speak and touch her at night. Her parents looked at each other, a look of concern crossing their faces, and asked questions about whether something had happened. Samantha took a deep breath and told them everything that had happened the night before. She told them about the doll poking her hand and speaking to her, and about the strange language it had whispered in. She told them about the strange events that had been happening all day, and about the feeling of unease she couldn't shake off. Her parents listened in disbelief, unsure of what to make of their daughter's story. But as they looked at the porcelain doll sitting in the chair at the table, they felt a sense of unease wash over them too. Her mother promised Samantha that they would remove the doll as soon as possible, and that she had nothing to worry about. But as Samantha went to bed that night, she couldn't shake off the feeling that the doll was still there, watching her. She tried to ignore it and went to sleep, hoping that it would all go away in the morning. But as she slept, she began to dream. In her dream, she was in a dark room, and the porcelain doll was standing in front of her, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. The doll began to speak in the same strange language it had spoken the night before, and Samantha felt a wave of fear wash over her. Suddenly, the doll began to move, its arms and legs twisting in impossible ways. It moved towards Samantha, its fingers reaching out to touch her. Samantha tried to run, but her feet wouldn't move. As the doll's fingers touched her skin, Samantha woke up, screaming. She sat up in bed, panting and sweating, and looked around the room. The doll was still there, sitting on her bedside table, but it didn't move or speak. Samantha knew she couldn't go back to sleep, so she got out of bed and went to the living room. Her parents were sitting there watching TV, and they looked up as she walked in. Her father inquired about what was wrong. Samantha hesitated, unsure of what to say. She didn't want to sound crazy, but she knew she had to tell them what had happened. Samantha recounted a dream where the doll was moving and speaking in a strange language, causing her voice to shake. Her parents shared a concerned glance, and her mother offered comfort by assuring her they would address the doll first thing the following day. But Samantha knew that it was too late. She knew that the doll was not just a toy, but something much more sinister, and she knew that it would never let her go. The following morning, Samantha's parents took the porcelain doll and put it in the trash can outside. Samantha watched as they carried it away, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She thought that she would finally be able to sleep peacefully without the doll's presence. However, that night, Samantha was once again woken up by the feeling of something poking her hand. She opened her eyes and saw the porcelain doll sitting on her bed, its eyes fixed on her. Samantha gasped and jumped out of bed, running to her parents' room in fear. "Mom, Dad, the doll is back," Samantha exclaimed, panting heavily. Her parents were confused and concerned, not knowing what to make of the situation. They got up and followed Samantha to her room, where they found the porcelain doll sitting on her bed. Samantha's parents looked at the doll in shock, unable to believe their eyes. Her father picked up the doll and examined it closely. He couldn't find any signs of tampering or trickery. The doll looked the same as it had the day before when they had thrown it away. Samantha's parents decided to take the doll and put it in a locked box in the attic. They assured Samantha that it wouldn't be able to bother her anymore. But Samantha knew deep down that the doll was not just a toy and that it wouldn't give up that easily. The next few days went by without any incidents. Samantha began to feel like maybe it was all in her head and that the doll wasn't alive. But then, one night, she woke up to the sound of scratching coming from the attic. Samantha got out of bed and went to investigate. She climbed up the stairs to the attic and saw that the locked box where the porcelain doll was supposed to be was now open. Samantha's heart raced as she realized that the doll had somehow managed to escape from the box. She searched the attic, but the doll was nowhere to be found. Samantha felt a wave of fear wash over her as she realized that the doll could be anywhere in the house. The next few nights were filled with strange occurrences. Samantha would wake up to find the doll sitting at the foot of her bed, or lying next to her pillow. Sometimes she would hear the doll whispering in that strange language, and other times she would hear it moving around the room. Samantha's parents tried to reassure her that it was just her imagination, but they could see the fear in her eyes. They even hired a priest to come and bless the house, hoping that it would get rid of whatever was haunting them, but it didn't work. One night, Samantha woke up to find the porcelain doll standing in front of her, its eyes glowing in the darkness. It began to move towards her, its fingers reaching out to touch her. Samantha screamed and tried to run, but the doll was too fast. It grabbed her by the ankle and pulled her back, causing her to fall onto the floor. Samantha's parents rushed into her room, but by the time they got there, the doll was gone. Samantha was lying on the floor, crying and shaking. Her parents decided that they had had enough and they called the police. The police arrived and searched the entire house, but they couldn't find any evidence of a break-in or a person who could have been moving the doll around. They were stumped, and Samantha's parents were left feeling hopeless. The strange occurrences continued for several more nights. Samantha would wake up to find the doll in different places around her room, sometimes even on top of her. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Samantha's parents had finally had enough. They decided to call a paranormal investigator to help them get to the bottom of what was going on in their house. The investigator arrived the next day and began to examine the house. As the investigator walked through the house, Samantha watched from a distance. She was scared and unsure of what to make of the situation. The investigator went into her room and began to look around. Samantha watched as the investigator picked up the porcelain doll and examined it closely. The investigator informed Samantha's parents that a malevolent spirit had taken possession of the doll and was utilizing it as a means to interact with the physical realm. Samantha's parents were shocked. They had never believed in ghosts or spirits, but the evidence was right in front of them. The investigator suggested that they perform a cleansing ritual to get rid of the spirit. That night, the investigator led Samantha's family through the ritual. They lit candles and chanted incantations, calling upon the power of good spirits to banish the evil one. Samantha watched in awe as the investigator moved around the room, sprinkling holy water and burning sage. As the ritual came to an end, Samantha felt a sudden wave of relief wash over her. She no longer felt the presence of the malevolent spirit in her room. She looked at the porcelain doll and saw that its eyes had lost their glow. It was just a doll again. Samantha's parents hugged her tightly, relieved that their daughter was finally safe. They decided to get rid of the doll once and for all. The next day, they took it outside and burned it in a fire. From that day on, Samantha was able to sleep peacefully at night. She no longer heard the doll whispering or felt its presence in her room. She knew that the evil spirit had been banished and that she was safe. But sometimes, when Samantha was alone in her room, she would hear a faint whispering in the wind. She would look out the window and see the smoke from the fire where the porcelain doll had been burned. And she couldn't help but wonder if the spirit was still out there, waiting to find another conduit to use to interact with the world.